All right, we are going to talk about the next assignment in class. And before I go further, though, I just want to tell you that today is a Friday, and so today is just talking about next week. This is not something that you need to think about, stress over, or attempt this weekend. This is going to be an assignment that covers several days, and as long as you're actually getting work done and turning it in on a daily basis, screenshotting your progress, I will give you additional time next week. And the assignment is only going to be due on Wednesday if you have not turned in anything throughout the entirety of the week. And so today is just informational. Don't worry about it. You have worked hard. You deserve your weekend, and so please do not take this as a reason to worry, stress, and fret when you should just be taking it easy this weekend. All right. All that being said, it is going to be a rather large assignment, and it's going to take 3 days at the minimum that we talked about. If you have been paying attention in class as we do group discussion, you realize that I have not been doing a whole lot of lecturing in class. I will ask a question, and then as a group, you all will come up with the answer and lead the discussion about what we're trying to talk about. And throughout the entirety of the first 4 weeks, we have talked about the history of communication in several different ways. And so instead of having a test that's multiple choice or that's matching, which is very, very easy and doesn't really test your actual knowledge, we are going to have a written assignment to assess where you're at this point, based on the knowledge that we have the knowledge that we have shared together. And it's going to be a written assignment that you are going to do on Google Classroom, so it should be typed up. I'm not going to necessarily read all of the information that's on the page because you are literate and you can read yourself, but I will discuss several of the bigger aspects of the assignment, and should you have questions or comments, I would appreciate if you would email them to me. My email is eric.gamble@dardanellelizards.com. The writing portion of the assignment is going to basically be 2 parts. The first part is going to be the information that we've covered up to this point. So the types of communication, starting with the most ancient humans when they're discussing things using nonverbals such as hand motions, facial expressions, and body language, and then basic sounds. Moving on to the use of spoken language, and that's like 50 to 100,000 years ago. Then we talked about cave art, which is about 65 to 40,000 years ago, and then we moved on to the first forms of writing, which were the pictorial forms in ancient Sumer, which was about 5.5 thousand years ago, and then between 400 and 500 years it took for them to morph from pictorial to actual written letters. And so those are the 5 different areas that we've discussed so far. They're written on the assignment, and you're going to discuss them in detail. The second portion of the writing is going to be your own thoughts and ideas about communication since then. So when you go back 5,000 years, it's actually 2000 BC. And so to put that in like historical sense that makes sense for you, that means it was 2,000 or 3,000 years before the birth of Christ. Since we're in the South, most of us can kind of reference that point in history. And so you're going to start from there, and you can use any advancement in technology that has occurred at all since then. And so we are talking about things like Native American use of smoke signals. You could use the ancient Roman and Greek use of mirrors and sunlight. You can use the Chinese use of signal fires. You can use the advancement and the creation of the printing press. You could talk about things like the advent of the Pony Express. You could talk about the inventions of the radio, of Morse code, of television. You could even talk about specific websites. One of my very, very favorite websites is YouTube. And so you could discuss that. You could even talk about apps. But you're going to talk about 5 different advancements in communication. But you're going to do so in a very specific manner. So that's what we're going to talk about next. I am so sad. I just thought I was recording the whole next part about explaining the assignment, and then I looked up, and the website, the program was not recording. So, okay, the assigned parts of the assignment. First of all is going to be the outline. It's going to be 75 points, and I have given you a specific example of the outline. I want you to produce an outline that looks exactly the same way, and whenever I'm discussing that later on today, pay attention to what I say, and again, if you have any questions, email me those questions. The works cited page in this handout and also today in the video, I'm going to tell you exactly how I want you to present that information that you get from other sources inside of the paper, how you're going to cite that source, and then how you're going to present those citations in a works cited page. That's going to be 75 points. As long as you follow the example and it looks like mine, you're going to be fine. The actual writing of the assignment is going to be 300 points. And I know that seems like a lot. It does seem like a lot, but this is a test grade, and so it's got to count for something, but also it's going to be a really in-depth week-long project. And what I was saying in the video that did not get recorded was the fact that if you're at home, you are going to screenshot the work that you've done on a daily basis. And if I can look and see that you have done an honest day's work each day for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but that you simply don't have enough time to finish the assignment, I'm going to give you an extra day on Thursday and possibly even Friday and the rest of the weekend to get it finished. It's just for the people who are not going, if they're going to take that gift of those days and they're going to not use it. I've already discussed with y'all in class my own ethos, my own ethics on homework. I don't like homework. I don't like to take work home. I don't know anyone who goes to the office and likes to take work home. Instead, they like to come home. They like to de-stress. They like to spend time with their friends and their family. That's what I want you to do. And so, do not worry about this assignment outside of my class. As long as you are trying your hardest for those 35 to 45 minutes in class, that's what I'm looking for. And that's what's going to decide whether or not we have extra time on Thursday or Friday. Okay? So, just do your best and everything's going to work out fine. And then we're going to have the presentation of the assignment. And now I'm not going to want to hear the things that we've already discussed in class because we've already talked about this as a group. So when you present your assignment, you're not going to present those first couple of paragraphs. You're not going to talk about sound and nonverbals. You're not going to talk about the use of language. You're not going to talk about cave art. You're not going to talk about the advent of writing with pictorial pictures, and you're also not going to talk about the advent of writing with actual letters. Instead, the presentation is going to focus on your own individual research and your own individual interest, and so I think it's going to make the presentations a lot more interesting in that way. Moving on to page 3, that is a picture of the outline, and so if you pay attention, it says number 2 is an exact example of what I want it to look like. So you can copy and paste that entire outline, and you can leave number 2 exactly the same. I don't care that you use number 2 for the outline, okay? But the rest is going to be your own homework, or your own work in class. So that very first one, why communication is important, you might want to give yourself a little bit of, you're going to give me a couple of sentences that discuss why communication is important. 3 to 5 sentences should be fine for number 1. For 3, 4, 5, and 6, you're going to do exactly what I showed you in point number 2. So if you look at outline number 2, you'll see that I gave 2-sentence explanation of how humans communicated with grunts and nonverbals. Just 2 sentences, that's it. So for face-to-face communication, you could give me 2 to 3 sentences about how and why humans communicated face-to-face before they advanced to cave art. The same thing for cave art, 2 to 3 sentences explanation of how and why they decided to start writing on cave walls. The same thing for pictorial-based writing, the same thing for alphabet-based writing. Now, the one thing that you're going to have to do for all the other ones is going to be presenting a problem that was associated with that that specific type of communication. So in the example, I talk about it only communicates with immediate needs. There's no way to talk about the future. And so the solution is that word use led to increased vocabulary and an ability to communicate and coordinate, which leads us into face-to-face communication using language. And so for these first couple, the solution might be the next form of communication. So the solution for grunts and nonverbals is, of course, going to be verbal communication using language. The solution for the problems that we find with face-to-face communication, at least in terms of time, would be for KVART, right? It's not necessarily going to solve distance, but it's going to solve the time problem that we discussed. The problems with KVART are going to be that they are not specific, they're not detailed. That would be remedied by pictorial-based writing, so forth and so on. And so this outline is going to be completely different page than the actual writing that you do, but you can use it as a rubric to check your writing. So you can look and say, okay, do I have these 12 paragraphs? 1, 2, 3. Okay, yes, I do. With paragraph number 3, do I have a problem and solution? I don't. That's something that I need to add. With paragraph number 5, I have a problem, but I didn't talk about a solution. All right. And you know, you can even double check and say, oh, I did not have 5 advancements in communication. Instead, I only have 4. So the outline is going to be your method of correcting your own mistakes before you turn in the assignment. Make sure that you do send me any questions that you have in that regard. All right, next is the use of sources. And so the use of sources can be really, really contentious at times, and you want to be aware that any teacher that makes a writing assignment does not want to see your copy and paste abilities, because we can find that information ourselves, right? So really what we're looking for is we're looking for your ability to find, synthesize, and present information that comes from a reliable source. So what's a reliable source? More than likely, if you go to a source like MSNBC.com or CNN.com or even FoxNews.com, those are going to be slanted. They might be a little bit more slanted on the political topics, but they're also kind of slanted when they present the scientific topics. So you want to stick to websites that have the .gov, the .edu, the .org, but even then you want to take care to actually look at their bias. So one of the things that we've talked about in class is that a person's bias or an entity's bias is, do they have a specific reason to make you want to believe something? So if they are a peanut butter seller, they are going to want you to think that peanut butter is the greatest thing on earth, right? And so if they are trying to convince you to vote a certain way or to think a certain way or to do a certain thing, then they are probably biased. If they are biased, they're not going to be an appropriate site to use, so you want to use an unbiased source, someone who's presenting the information but is not trying to get you to think or act on it in any way. And so most of the time you're going to find those at .gov and .org and .edu websites. The next thing that you want to be aware is that when we have a writing assignment, the teacher is looking to test your integrity, whether or not you're actually going to write the paper yourself or if you're going to attempt to plagiarize. Plagiarism is whenever you take someone else's work and you pass it off as your own, and it does go against the student manual, but other than that, it's just also, you don't learn anything from it. You're not going to grow from it as a person, and so you don't want to do it. Also, it's going to count as a 0, so please, please, please do not plagiarize. Do not use other information without letting us know where it came from and specifically what information you used from that source. Next, when we give you writing assignments, we're looking for the quality of your own writing, but also the quality of your own thinking. And so if the majority of the writing is actually copy and pasted, we don't know any of those things. We don't actually get to learn more about you, and more importantly, we don't get to see how we can help you become better, because these copy and paste jobs come from a different person altogether. So the majority of any written assignment should be your own thoughts, your own ideas. It should not be a copy and paste of information that you find on the internet. And then the last thing is that you are going to have 10 sources that you're going to use in this writing. You should never copy and paste more than 3 to 4 sentences at a time. But here's the but. If you find something that's really, really good, like you want to use an entire paragraph, I'll cut you some slack as long as the majority of that paragraph is still your own writing. So if I were to copy and paste the entire paragraph, put it into a Word document, and see that it's 1,000 words, If 51% of those words are your own, then I will not actually have I will not count anything against you, okay? But that being said, I really don't want that to happen too often, so please don't let that happen too often. In the website or on the Google Classroom, I also show you how I want you to cite the source. The example is a little bit short, but that's okay. So it says human beings have been described by Kenneth Burke as symbol using animals. Notice that the person in this sentence did cite the author, but then they also put the information that they used from another source in parentheses, and then are in quotation marks, and then in parentheses they have the actual source that's going to be on the sources cited page. And so whenever you use other people's work, you're going to have parenthetical citations that lets us know where to look at in the works cited page. But also for my own ease of grading, I want you to put any information that you copy and paste into quotation marks and also italicize it, okay? It's going to make it so much easier on me to grade these papers. At the bottom, it also shows you the format for MLA format. It's going to be the last name and the first name of the author, because most of you are going to be using websites. You're going to give me the title of the article. You're going to give me the publication. So if it's like CNN.com or FoxNews.com, you would just put Fox News or CNN, and then you're going to give me the website. Make sure that it's a working link. That way you can get to the website that you actually used. And then on the next page, you're going to have a works cited page, and that's how it should look. One of the tips that I gave people in class is that if you are using your own computer and not a school computer, you can use a Chrome add-on called Cite Creator, C-I-T-E Creator. And whenever you go to a website, down at the bottom, it will give you the actual MLA format for that website. It will save you a ton of time doing that. For me, there's nothing bad about that. There's nothing unethical about that. If you want to use Cite Creator, you can do so. If you are a student in class, it's not going to work on the Chromebook. And so if you want to email yourself the links that you use in your writing and then create your citations using Cite Creator on a different computer and add them in later, you're free to do so also. But the problem is that it's going to be hard for you to figure out what order those go in on your works cited page if you don't keep track of them as you use them. So just a little tip. If you're going to do that, make sure that you have an open document where you're copying and pasting any websites that you're using. And the final thing that we're going to talk about is the writing example that is on the last page, which is on page 7 of today's explanation. You can see that I did highlight the actual evidence that I used, but you don't have to do that. That's just a way for you to see what I did in this writing assignment. Down below, you'll also see that I gave you the citations as they would appear on the works cited page. Now there was some confusion in first period, so I want to clear it up. I do not want you to put your works cited at the bottom of each paragraph. This is just an informational example on this handout so that you can see how the written page would correlate with the works cited page. Okay, so the only thing that you should actually be doing on the written page is what's happening inside of that paragraph. So any information that you are going to copy and paste should be in quotations, should be italicized. The source itself, you should use the name of the source or the name of the author in parentheses before the end of the sentence, and then most of it should be your own words. It should focus on how we communicated in that way, problems that arose, and ways that we fixed that problem. If you have any questions or any comments at all, don't hesitate to ask me. I would prefer if you ask me those today before we start writing on Monday. That way on Monday you can just get started. All right? But like I said, other than that, don't worry about it this weekend. Do not try to write this weekend. You're going to have next week. It's going to be fine. I know it's a little bit scary, but I promise we're going to get through it together, and just let me know. Let me know